Hello, Craig Yambor back again to talk to you about Module 2's lab, Can You Filter Water? First things first, we know that all students come to classes or experiences with preconceived notions. So let's talk about some of mine. Coming into this lab, I should let you know that I'm a homeowner with a septic system and a well, so I have a filter like this in my basement. I also camp with a camper, and when we go camping, we often hook up a filter like this, which is another modular filter similar to this inside, but has some carbon in it as well, to help keep the water we drink when we're camping clean. And then when I go backpacking, I take this handy little portable model and throw it in a stream and grab my water from that. So I know a little bit about filtering water from my prior experience. So next, once I had all the materials gathered and reviewed the instructions that were provided, I went off and found some references, as was recommended. So I went through some of these sites here, including the two that were recommended, and found out a little bit more about water filtering and accentuated some of the knowledge I already knew, so that I was more prepared to jump into the lab. Here's my design. It starts with the settling basin, much like a municipal water authority, or like in nature when water sits in a pond or lake and sediment falls to the bottom. Then it flows off into the coffee filter, which represents something like in nature leaves that might filter out at the top level. I also like the coffee filter because it's modular and easily replaceable, so it's a cheap, maintainable layer. Then it moves to the sand, charcoal, and gravel layers. I chose this because it was similar to most models I saw online, and I'll talk more about how they work together in the later improvement section. Then I went through a final particulate cloth filter layer, the cheesecloth. I chose that last because it has a very strong wicking nature to it, and I knew it would pull the moisture up that had most of the remaining small particulate in it. Next, to measure how well my filter system worked, I made this chart with two Secchi discs on it to do comparisons of the clarity of water. Here you see that I found some dirty water, pond water, that I compared with tap water, and you can tell that the pond water, based on the Secchi disc, is probably pushing close to 100 JTU, or Jackson turbidity units. Next you'll see I found another sample of dirty water, a control sample, and I added some alum to the dirty sample. And by the time I got stirring and got oriented for the picture, it was about 5 minutes in, and as you can see, the alum is already hard at work, helping the particulate to settle out. Here we're 15 minutes in, and again, the alum has been working hard, and you can see it's made some really good progress at settling out the particulate. Finally, at 30 minutes, you can see that the alum has really pulled a lot of the particulate out, although the dirty water control has also lost some of the particulate from gravity. And you can also see that the Secchi disc on the alum sample is starting to become visible. On the flip side, you can see, while we made a lot of progress in moving away from the dirty sample, when you compare it to tap water, we're not quite there on the clarity level. So there's still room for growth. And you can see the two Secchi discs behind there and how one's a bit more viewable than the other. Alright, so here we see my filter fully constructed per design, and my settling basin with the dirty sample water with alum already mixed in and the settling occurring. My next step will be to pour the water gently so that the settling doesn't get disrupted into my filter and allow it to flow through. Here you see kind of an end state shot. On the far right, we have the dirty water sample container, the settling basin. There's barely any water left in there. I had poured just about all of it out. You do see quite a bit of sediment there at the bottom. And then you see in the middle the whole filter system from coffee filter on down through. And you might be able to tell that there's a little bit of filtered water in the bottom cup that I had caught there. And what I had been doing throughout the process was lifting the modular filter up. And as the catch basin at the bottom filled up, I was moving into my other sample bottle so I could make a good comparison of the clarity at the end. So how did we do? Well, we did a pretty good job. As you can see, the filtered water, the Secchi disc is very visible, and the control water, like in the beginning, you really can't see through it. How do we do compared to tap water? Well, it looks like we got pretty close. The tap water on the left does appear to be slightly clearer than the filtered water on the right. The filtered water appears to have a slight grayish tinge. I think I'd like to attribute that largely to the charcoal used. I did notice in the cheesecloth layer at the very end that it did pick up a blackish gray tint which means it was grabbing some of that charcoal likely, and I suspect maybe some of it worked its way through, but there could have also been other particulate that made its way over to the bottom. Finally, how about some potential changes? Well, first thing, I would be tempted, if I was doing a more robust effort, to throw in an organic component at the beginning, a mechanism like a hydroponic garden to pull off some of the nitrates that are toxins in water. Then, obviously, like a water treatment plant, it might be a nice idea to introduce some chlorine or iodine to disinfect the water and kill off bacteria. Then, as I looked at the layers in the middle here, the sand, the charcoal, and the gravel, I felt it would have actually been better to co-locate them in one unit. I believe that when they're packed together, the sand, charcoal, and gravel start to merge together a bit, and it creates a situation where the filtering is very dense near the top, and as you get down the lower gravel sections, it's much looser, and it creates both a draw and also a very fine filtering. So I think if I was to do it again, I might just pack those together and not go for a modular unit in that section. Okay, so how did this activity rate on the inquiry continuum? Well, for the question, it was teacher provided in this case, and that's okay. Data, we had some guidance about how to collect data. There was some talk about CikiDist in there, and of course, some of the materials talked about some of the measures. But there was also some flexibility. I stuck with the CikiDiscs, but I imagine other people may have tried some other things. As far as explanation, the learner developed that. Evaluation, the learner developed that. And for communication and justification, the learner is doing that as well. So a pretty good rating overall. On the FAE rubric, I would put it as a 2. So a pretty good activity overall for some inquiry in the classroom.